We're going to be talking about what type of certifications are available, our GoEngineer resources to help you get prepared to take the certifications. We're going to have some tips on preparing for the exam, some stuff you can do as far as setting up your computer and that type of thing, as well as some tips for when you are taking the exam. And then we will talk about the exam in the sense of how it's kind of laid out. And I have 3 sample questions, as well as just a question that I made up that's nearly identical to the way the exam's going to be. And then some tips and tricks on some tips on taking the certification exams from SOLIDWORKS and some general test taking tips and tricks. And then we'll open it up to any questions. You can use the chat function as in part of Zoom to type in your questions, and I'll be going over those to see what I can answer. As we mentioned, this is a recorded webinar, and we will get that up as soon as possible. So to start, we're going to look at what certifications are available. On the right-hand side of the screen, I know it's kind of small, but these are the certifications available, and they're basically blocked out into 3 different certifications. Now, if you could see me, I'd be holding up 4 fingers. I was born and raised in California, so I say 3, but hold up 4 fingers. The CSWA or associate exams are basically the I don't want to say introductory exams, but they're exams to basically make sure that you have knowledge on using a solid modeler. You have the basic skills to design parts, create drawings, and make assemblies of those parts. And then there's a couple topic-specific exams, such as the additive manufacturing, electrical simulation, and sustainability. Then we have our certified SOLIDWORKS professional exams. The one that everyone's most interested in getting into is the CSWP. And then we have some specific exams for drawings, mold making, surfacing, CAM, simulation. And the last group is our CSWE, or Certified SOLIDWORKS Expert. And in the Expert, we have 2 certifications, one for SOLIDWORKS and one for simulation. The last, that 4th piece is actually two separate pieces. In the CSWA and CSWP, I've got these ones right here that are highlighted with an asterisk. The CSWA mechanical academic version and the CSWP mechanical academic version. These are available to students. You have to go through a separate process to get the vouchers for those, but those are specifically designed for students. And then last but not least, we have our certified PDM professional administrator. So if you're a PDM administrator, if you're looking to go towards that route, you can get this certification. We have links on the screen here. The official certification catalog from SOLIDWORKS. This just kind of goes through and shows you what the different certifications are, explains what it's going to be testing you on. But more specifically, when you click on one of these, so like if we're looking at the CSWE mechanical design, when you click on these, you can purchase the exam. It has the prerequisites for the exam. So you have to do the CSWP and pass that, and at least 4 of the advanced topics. So sheet metal, weldment, surfacing. And then in here, if there are sample exams, so the CSWE is very similar to the CSWP for mechanical design. So if I go back and look at like the CSWP mechanical design, you can purchase this, but right here you'll see there's a sample exam. And this exam, they're written exactly like the exam that you'll be presented during your testing. And really, really strong recommendation that sample exams before you consider going in and purchasing or getting vouchers to take the real exam. They will put some prerequisites in here. As you notice here, it says that you should take the Essentials class, the Drawings class. here it does point out that most of these exams are written to be version independent. So it doesn't matter what version of SOLIDWORKS you have, but they do recommend that you have at least SOLIDWORKS 2015 or newer. The main reason why is because the sample parts during the exam, there'll be some parts that you'll open and make changes to or assemble. Those were saved as SOLIDWORKS 2015 files. The next two links here, if you are a SOLIDWORKS subscription customer, so if you have SOLIDWORKS subscription services through GoEngineer or your SOLIDWORKS reseller, you can click on this link and it will provide you with instructions on how to get your free vouchers as part of your SOLIDWORKS subscription. It's one of the benefits of having a SOLIDWORKS subscription is that you get 2 vouchers a year. Ultimately, there's one every 6 months. And if you're a educator or a student, there's a link in here so you can get your academic certification vouchers in there. They do mention the fact that you have to have a SOLIDWORKS customer portal account to get these. So ultimately what will happen is you'll go into the virtual tester site, which I'll have a link for, and then you'll click on a link, the little $sign, and it will ask you to log into your customer portal account. Once you get in there, then you can copy the code, go back into the tester software, enter that code, and then it will give you a voucher for a test. There are the free vouchers. If you want to use this time right now to get more than what we do as far as the free vouchers are concerned, this link will bring you into the website. It's a SOLIDWORKS website for purchasing additional exam vouchers. So for example, if you wanted to get the associate for electrical, it's $19.95. If we come down here, I want to point out that the CSWP test, that is actually a 3-part test, and each one of those parts has a cost associated with it. So when you get your voucher will get you one of these parts. If you're doing one of the other tests, the voucher will cover that test. Now, as far as GoEngineer resources, our GoEngineer website, SOLIDWORKS certification, what we've done is we've put together resources that we have run into as far as we do actually go through and get certified ourselves, as well as talking to customers. So we have some links on what training programs you should go through before you take the tests. We have information about preparing, so training. It talks about our online classes and our in-person classes. However, I will point out currently we have temporarily suspended the in-person classes, and we'll talk here about the self-paced and the virtual classroom here in just a second. Study. There are exam prep books put out by SDC, our online lessons, as well as a link to those practice tests that I was just showing you, and then actually taking the tests. This video actually goes through that process of redeeming your vouchers. And then we are going to be placing this webinar and another webinar that we did on getting the vouchers. We'll be getting those up on this website as well. So this will actually be updated with this presentation and at least one other presentation that we've done on certification. So let's get into the training. If you're going for the CSWA, we recommend at least having the knowledge of the information from the SOLIDWORKS Essentials class. If you're going for the CSWP, we would definitely recommend the Essentials, the Advanced Part Modeling, and Assembly Modeling. Now, I put little asterisks here when we are doing our classroom-based training. The GoEngineer SOLIDWORKS Advanced class is actually these 2 classes in a 4-day format. So we do 2 days of the part modeling and 2 days of the assembly modeling. And then for the CSWA or CSWP on the individual topics, we will have both online and self-paced training material that you can purchase for, let's say, the sheet metal or advanced surfacing, that type of stuff. So the meat and potatoes of this presentation, first step is preparing for the exam. Biggest question we get is, will we need an internet connection? And the answer is absolutely. The exam software is going to be running on your computer, but it does connect to the internet to get the questions as well as to report the results. So you will have to have internet connection throughout the course of the exam. One of the things that I would definitely recommend is when you're ready to do the exam, reboot your computer. Turn off all unnecessary applications, your chat, your online drive syncing, email programs. I know all the time, every time I sit down to go do an exam, I start getting pinged by customers with questions or coworkers wanting to have a conversation about something. And it's like the exams are timed. Use 2 or more monitors. Minimum recommendation. This isn't just we think you should use 2 monitors. I would definitely say I would recommend using 2 monitors. The testing software can be placed on one monitor with SOLIDWORKS on the other monitor. That way you're not having to flip between the testing software and SOLIDWORKS. There's going to be pictures with drawings with dimensions, and it says, okay, hey, create this part. And it's really nice to be able to have the testing software on a second monitor, so you can just look at that monitor to see what the values are or what the geometry should look like. Use the most current version of SOLIDWORKS. This should be a no-brainer. Whatever you have available, use that. A lot of companies will allow their employees to install SOLIDWORKS on their home computer and access the license through a VPN or something like that. If your company's got access to 2020 and you have 2018 on your home computer, I would definitely recommend that you use the 2020. Now, again, the test is not version specific, so there's not going to ask you, well, how do you use this function that's only available in a specific version of SOLIDWORKS? It's more testing your knowledge on how to build models, how to create assemblies, how to create drawings, make edits and repairs to those. So it's not designed to be version specific, but newer versions of SOLIDWORKS have improvements and updates, performance enhancements. And as I mentioned, the test is time-based. So you'll have a certain amount of time to complete the test, and newer versions of SOLIDWORKS simply run faster. Set up your computer. Most specifically, I would recommend having templates, having inch templates and millimeter templates. Some of the parts will give you dimensions in inches. Some of the parts will give you dimensions in millimeters. And it's really nice that if you're creating your parts from scratch, that you can hit part MM, part IN, for example, instead of having to create the part and then having to remember to change the unit of measurement. Myself, I get kind of nervous when it comes to actually taking the test, and I'll start it up and I'll start creating the part and then realize, oops, this is supposed to be in millimeters, but I'm in inches. So having a template and being able to just click on that helps. Now, learning how to assign materials and learning how to get mass to your parts. I want to show you how this is done just so we can be sure. When you create a part inside of SOLIDWORKS, or you're opening a part inside of SOLIDWORKS, you're going to create your geometry. You should always use fully defined sketches. So make sure you're using your dimension tool and placing your dimensions on your part. And then we're going to extrude. Now, here's the part. To assign a material, you're going to go here to the left-hand side where the feature manager is. You're going to right-click on the material selection, and you can select Edit Material and pick the particular material that this exam is asking you for. So if I was looking for 6061 aluminum, I could come down here and scroll through all the different aluminum types until I get the 6061, and maybe it's asking for 6061 T4. When you do this, I would verify the density. The exam is going to tell you what the density is. Let's say if it's in millimeters, it's going to say it's this value in, let's say, millimeters cubed. So you can actually change the unit of measure right here. Select metric, for example. And here it's saying it's 0.0027 kilograms per centimeters cubed. And then just verify that this material is what it's calling out in the test. If it, for some reason it's not, I would definitely call us to let us know. But if you have to, I don't see any reason why you would, but if you have to, with the part open, if you go to your SOLIDWORKS options, come down here to materials, go to document properties, and then come down here to material properties, and you can type in the value right here. Number one, I would definitely recommend that you use the material library, but if for some reason there's a conflict, you can simply type in the value that they're calling out here. One other thing is going in and assigning that 6061 is kind of a pain. Coming here and say edit material, and then coming in and finding aluminums, and then coming down here to scroll all the way down to the 6061s to get to the particular part that you want. So when you're in your material library here, you can go to favorites, and when you're in the favorites, you can add or remove items from this list here. So if you see here, my top favorite is AISI 1020 steel. If you could see me, I'm winking at you. That might be a material that would be helpful to have in your favorites. You can add the favorites. There's a limit to how many favorites you can have. So we'll come over here. I'll remove that one. And then to add the material that you want, you can actually right click and select add to favorites. Okay. The add button when you're out here is typically grayed out. You actually do have to select something from here for the add button to go. If I right click, I can select add to favorites, or with the item selected, I can click on add here, and then you can move it up to the top if you know that might be something helpful to you. And then when we close this, when I go to assign a material, instead of having to right click and say edit material and make all those selections, I can simply come down here and select 6061 T4, and that's assign the material to this part. Now, the second piece of this is going to the Evaluate tab and selecting Mass Properties. This is going to bring up a new dialog box. And the first thing I want to point out is in the exam, it's going to tell you what unit of measurement, how many decimal places. So let's say they call out millimeters, grams, seconds, and it says 2 decimal places. Click on the Options button right here. Come down here and select Custom Settings. Select the length, change it to 2, make sure the mass is here, and for the testing, I would actually recommend that this is set to the middle, if not the highest accuracy level. When you click on that, here's going to be the mass. You're going to take this value right here and enter that into the exam software. So when you're doing the exam, if it's having you build a part, how it's going to verify that you've built the part correctly is it's going to ask you to do a mass properties on the part, and then it's going to either give you a multiple choice and give you 4 items with different numbers, and you're going to try to match that number. We want to be within 1% of the values that are listed if it's multiple choice. The other way they'll ask you is the copy and paste or the type in this number that's right here. But I want to make sure before you start the exam how materials and how to get the mass properties, because that's not something everyone does. All right, so go back to the PowerPoint. So how to assign materials to your properties and learn how to get the mass. The next thing I want to make sure that you guys are comfortable with when you get ready to take the test is creating variables and linked values. When we go into the sample part, this will make much more sense, but I want to make sure you guys understand how to create variables and how to do linked values. So in the sketch or the model, you can bring up the dimensions and right click and say, I want to link the values. This is going to bring up a shared values item right here, and you can give it a name. I'm going to say box width dimension. And then it's going to put the little infinity symbol here. That basically creates a variable called box dimensions and assigns this dimension to that variable. But the key thing here is it's creating it through what's called a link. So while I like link values, I'm more favorited to actually creating variables and then assigning those variables. But if you are using link values, you can right click on a single dimension. What's nice is you can actually select multiple dimensions by holding the control key here. You select both of those in here. And then right clicking and selecting link values. If you're creating a new one, you can select that value, or you can hit the drop down and select any dimensions that are, or any variables that have been created already. What that's going to do is if I change one and say this is 40, it's going to change the other one. The benefit of using link values over an equation is with an equation, I would say this dimension is equal to this dimension. We can do that if you double click real quick to bring up the dimension properties box. So if you double click really quick, it will bring up this box. Or if you turn off the instant 2D or the instant 3D. With those off, you have to double click on the part to bring up the dimensions and then double click on the dimension to bring up the edit. But most importantly here, you can actually type equal and then click on a dimension. And that's creating a link that says this dimension is equal to this dimension. And then when I hit the checkbox, it's going to put a, I can never remember the name of this symbol, but it's the fancy E. And if I change this dimension and say it's 50, the link is going to change this one. And then when I rebuild, it's going to update this one. So the link values update automatically, and then the equations are done through rebuilds. But the challenge with an equation is if I double click on this dimension, it's going to say, well, you can't change this because it is an equation. It's going to show me what the equation is here. One little side note, if you click on the little E right here, it will give you the evaluated value, but you can't actually change that. You can break that link to the equation by clicking on this and then coming in here, removing this information, and then just typing a value, 45, and that's broken the link. You'll see the little E's gone away, and now this is an independent dimension. But you create the equations at the dimension level by saying, I'm going to say equal to, and then clicking on another dimension. We could even say divided by 2. And then the little rebuild here will just does a rebuild while keeping the dialog box open. So you can see how does that work. Okay, that's 50 divided by 2. That's great. I can hit the checkbox and say I'm happy. Now to access the equations and link values, go to Tools and Equations. Excuse me, Tools and Equations, right here. Now, if you're not very comfortable with all these menus here, one thing that you can do is use this search function up here. Now, the big thing is you want to hit this down arrow and make sure you're searching for commands versus the SOLIDWORKS help. But if we are at commands, I can start typing equations, EQU, and then it gives me a list of items that have EQU in there, and there's equations. By clicking on this, it will run that command. But if you click on the eyeball, this is my favorite part here, you click on the eyeball, just let go of the mouse, SOLIDWORKS is actually going to go show you where that command is and put a big red arrow, but it's also put the cursor exactly where you would need to click. So if I click on this, it will bring up the equations dialog box. And here you can see I have my linked value, my box dimension. Now it's all grayed out because these are being driven by the dimension. I can't change it here at the dialog box. And then I have my equations right here. So there's that D1 at boss extrude 1. So that's this dimension name. And then it tells me what the equation is. And then it gives me what it evaluates to. Now, what I like to do, specifically if I'm taking an exam, When I show you the examples, you'll see that instead of giving you dimensions on values for all the dimensions, they'll list out like A, B, and C, and then tell you what the A, B, and C values are in text. So what you can actually do here is if you bring this up, so before you get started creating your model, just bring up Tools, Equations, and then type in A, and then say that's 50. And then say B, and say that's 40. And then C, and maybe call that 25. And then click on OK. And then either at the model or in the sketch, when you're, I'm going to break the link here real quick. I'm going to unlink these values. So right click on it and select unlink value. Right click, unlink value. But when you're placing the dimension, so let's say I'm in here and I'm placing the dimension, so I click in there. With the 2D, instant 2D off, it just brings up the modify dimension dialog. And right here I can say equal, and then select global variables and say this dimension is the global variable A. And double click on this one, type equal, come in here and select global variable B. Checkbox. Exit the sketch, bring up the depth dimension right here. I'm going to double click on that, and then I'm going to wipe this part out, and then type equal global variable C. Hit my checkbox. I'll rebuild the part. I'm hitting Control B, and now I have my dimensions 50, 25, and 40. Now, if I need to change it, so let's say in the next step it says change the variable A from 50 to 40. Instead of double clicking on this and making the changes to the different dimensions, I can simply go to Tools, Equations, and then right here I can just follow what the test says. Change this to 40, change this to 35, and change this to 10. Click on OK, and that's updated. I might do a rebuild just to be sure it's updated. And the part now is 40, 10, and 35. So get comfortable with creating the equations, the global variables, linking values, whichever makes the most sense to you. The main reason why I like doing those values there is as we get into the more complicated parts, or we're looking at like the CSWE exam, there's going to be a lot of dimensions, a lot of features, and instead of having to go through the features and try to remember which feature is the one that you need to modify, or which features, what dimension in which feature is the one you need to modify when it says change A, by going to the equations dialog box and just changing the value of A, I don't have to go in and find the feature and then find the dimension. So hopefully that answers your question about why making global variables versus just typing in the dimensions. Here, it's a simple part, just double clicking. These are the 3 dimensions I'm working with. But if I have a part that has maybe 10 or 15 features, and each one of those features has 3 to 4 dimensions, as I'm going through, that's 30, 40, 50 dimensions. Something I actually didn't put into my PowerPoint that I just reminded of is SOLIDWORKS, the newer versions of SOLIDWORKS. I don't recall what version, but the newer versions have the ability to save items as favorites. So this might be an alternative solution to creating those variables, but you can right-click on an item and save it as a favorite. So the dimensions themselves can't be saved as a favorite, but the features can be saved as a favorite. So let's create a second feature right here. So I'm just going to offset this. We'll bring it in here. However you want to build your parts. I just turned off Instant 3D. So I'm a big fan of Instant 3D because you can drag this out. You can actually make it a whole. Completely up to you how you build your parts, whatever you're comfortable with. Don't try to change the way you build the parts right before you take a test. But if this was the dimension that I know I'm going to have to change, I can right-click on that feature, and select Add to Favorites. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a folder at the top of your feature manager right here, and then within that folder will be your favorite items or your favorite features. So then I can just click on it here and then quickly access the dimension and say I want to change that to 30 and have it work that way. So hopefully that makes sense as far as what I'm talking about in the presentation about learning how to create variables and link values, how to use equations, and I'll add that in after this about using favorites. Now this next one here, help. There's nothing in the rules that says you can't use the help file while you're taking the test. Matter of fact, I wouldn't say it's recommended, but there's absolutely nothing that says you can't use the help file. The help file inside of SOLIDWORKS, when you come in here and say, I want to go to the help, this is kind of a built-in help, and you could take this and maybe put it on another screen, but there are times where, because we're running this through SOLIDWORKS, when you close a part, the help file might close type of thing. So one of the things that you can do is if you bring up a browser window, so I'm going to climb up here, bring up a browser window and type help.solidworks.com. This is your SOLIDWORKS help file. It's a web-based version, so if they make any updates or anything like that, this gets updated before the help inside of SOLIDWORKS, because the help inside of SOLIDWORKS, if there's a major change, they'll put that in a service pack, for example. So this will get updated, especially if you're not on the most current service pack. Plus, you can actually pick what version of SOLIDWORKS you're working in. So if you are using SOLIDWORKS 2015, this is the help file for SOLIDWORKS 2015. You could say SOLIDWORKS, and then you'll see here, this is that help file. There's a search function up here. So if you're looking for a specific command, how do I create a guide curve? So here's the loft property manager, or lofting with guide curves and non-planar profiles. So you can bring up all the information here. And this is just a web browser window. So you can just keep it up, maybe even put it on the second screen. Another thing is when you're actually working in here, so let's say I want to do a replace face command, but it's not something I do all the time. So if I come in here to surfaces and I select replace face, you'll see in the command there's a question mark right here. If you click on that question mark, it will bring up the help, but the key thing is it will bring up the help on that specific command that you're at. So I actually use this all the time. I don't remember how to do every single command inside of SOLIDWORKS, so I'll start the command, click on the little question mark icon there, look through here, see what items are what it's looking for. So when I put my cursor over here, it's going to say tangent face for replacement, and this one here is the replacement surface. That's pretty self-explanatory, but sometimes those little tooltips aren't as helpful as we'd like them to be. So by clicking on this question mark, it definitely gives us our access to the help file, specifically to the item that you're looking for. Let's see, what else is there in here with the help? One of the quick ways to get up this search keyboard shortcut, but what's really kind of interesting. So if I click here to where it's searching for the help and I type equations, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to bring up the help file, but then automatically do a search for whatever you typed in here. So it's searching the help file for equations. So for views of equations, exporting and linking equations to external files, design tables and equations, all sorts of information about equations. So going into the help there works really well. Now, a lot of people know about the keyboard shortcut S. I call it the super shortcut key. So when I'm in a part, if I hit S, it's going to bring up on my computer the cut extrude, the boss extrude, ag fillet, create a plane, and the hole wizard, for example. Now, if I'm in a sketch and I hit the S key, it's going to bring up the sketch tools. If I'm in a drawing and I hit the S key, it's going to bring up drawing tools. And if I hit the S key and I'm in an assembly, it will bring up assembly commands. Now, when you bring this up, if you right click on it, you can go to customize, or just simply go to your gear icon, hit the arrow below it and select customize. And it'll bring it up here. And then you can go to this shortcut filters or shortcut bars. And you'll see there's one for parts, one's for assemblies, one for drawings, and one for sketching. And I like bringing this up because this was something that I've done here that's different than the standard one. But you can actually put a mixture of part and drawing and assembly stuff in any one of these. So when I'm here in the sketch tools, I might come out and say, well, I'm going to go to features. And then I'm going to select the extruded cut and drag that into this shortcut bar. So now I have my boss extrude and my boss cut. And what this allows me to do is I'm in a sketch. I can hit that S key, say I want to draw a circle, for example. Draw my circle, and then just hit the S key and say we're going to take that circle and make an extruded cut. I don't have to go up here, flip the features, and hit extruded cut. Just by hitting the S key, it brings it up. Okay. Now the other thing is when you are, so let me go back up here and say I'm in the search for help right now. So it's searching for help. When you hit that S key, it actually changes that search box up at the top right-hand corner to the command search. And then I could actually type. So I hit S and then I hit extrude. And then it will actually bring up a list of those commands. I can use my arrow to scroll up and down, and I could say I want to do an extruded cut, and it will go into the extrude cut command. So this S key, this is why I call it the super shortcut key, because you can customize what is here. And you're not limited to just your sketch tools. You can add your features. So if you do a lot of lofting or sweeping, you might add that to your sketch shortcut bar so you don't have to go up here and hit loft or sweep. You can just S key and click on these. But the other thing is, let's say, I don't know, I'm going to extrude this as a boss. So if I hit S, I can just start typing EXT, and then hit the down arrow a couple times and hit enter, and it will go into the extrude function. And then I might reverse the direction, or I like being able to just click the arrow right here and then click the checkbox, and I've got my extrude. Oh, it's on. I can't cut extrude. So let me flip that. So there's my cut. That super shortcut key, again, it works if I'm in part mode right here. I hit S, and it brings up part features. So like here's my fillet command, and I just click on that, start adding the fillets. Boy, this is a lot of edges to select. 8 edges right here. And I kind of got to roll the part around. So while I'm here, let's talk about the shortcuts in some of the commands. So we have our S key that you can bring up the shortcuts for the part, sketch, assembly, and drawing mode, but there are actually shortcuts in the commands as well. The first one is something that we actually teach in the Essentials class, and that is the ability to select through the model. That's actually an option, and in the early versions of SOLIDWORKS, that option was turned off by default. If I move my cursor, I can select this edge and select this edge, select this edge. But if I move my cursor back here to where that back edge would appear, you can actually select that edge through the model. What we used to have to do in the past was either rotate this around or maybe switch to wireframe so we can see the edge. Now, if you can't do that, okay, if you look in the options under your fillet, there's a checkbox right here that says, somewhere in here, fillet options, there it is, select through faces. Again, that can be turned off or turned on. If it's turned off, you can't select through the face to get to that back edge. So I would have to rotate the models to be able to see the edge, to be able to select it. With that turned on, if I rotate this back, I can select that back edge here, and you see, there it is, right there. So I can select through the model. That's the select through faces right here. Another option is this guy up here at the top, this show selection toolbar. I actually turned that off one day and was frustrated because I spent 2-3 days using SOLIDWORKS and not having my selection toolbar come up. And I was like, why doesn't this come up? Because I turned it off. And I forgot I had turned it off, and I forgot that this was an option to be able to turn on and off. But what this selection toolbar does, when it's off, I would have to select this edge and then select this edge and then select this edge and this edge. And if I wanted to get all the vertical edges, I'd have to make 8 selections, 8 mouse clicks. I'm going to clear this out, and I'm actually going to change the value here to maybe 2 millimeters so they're not too big. But with this selection toolbar on, it may actually be helpful in making your selections. It's not always going to give you exactly what you're looking for. But when I click on this first edge, it's going to bring up this selection toolbar. And you don't click on it, just put your cursor over it and it'll highlight. Do you want to select these other 3 edges? And just go through the list right here and go over here, and then it's going to select all 8 edges. If I click here, it's going to select the 4 vertical edges and the 4 edges on the top of the model. And here's the 4 edges, the top and the bottom. Here's every edge in the model. And then in this particular case, here's all the convex edges. This will change based off your model. So it won't always give you the same options. And sometimes it will give you, like, in this case, I want 8 edges, so right here. Sometimes it will give you 7 of those 8 edges. Well, that's still 7 out of 8. So you made 2 mouse clicks, and then 1 more mouse click for that last option or last edge. So 3 mouse clicks instead of 8 mouse clicks. So I find this very, very helpful. Very helpful. There's a question that just came in, is that only in 2020? The answer is no. It's been in SOLIDWORKS for a number of years. Back far enough that I actually don't remember when the selection, the S shortcut key, and when that option to bring up the selection toolbar. Certain features will have it when basically anything that requires you to select edges. That will be there, this show selection toolbar. Just make sure if you turn it off, we turn it back on. Look to see if yours is on. It's probably one of those things that pops up when you click on things, and then we just simply ignore it and come over here and select that edge and select that edge. And it's coming up here saying, hey, I can be helpful to you. Come over here and, in this case, select those 4. And then change the value, 2 millimeters, and there. But no, it's been there quite a while. Now, another thing on your selection, somebody mentioned the gesture toolbar. The gesture toolbar is, I wouldn't say a replacement for the selection toolbar, but it's an alternative to the selection toolbar. Now, this hasn't been in SOLIDWORKS for a long time, but it's been in there for at least 4 or 5 years. When you are in a command or in a mode of SOLIDWORKS, so part, assembly, drawing, or sketch, if you hold the right mouse button down and then move the mouse just a little bit, you'll get this gesture wheel. I like to call it the wheel of features. And basically, like if I'm in the part mode, I can say, let's go to the top view. So just hold the right mouse button down and kind of flick your mouse up, and it's going to the top view. Hold the right mouse button down, flick it down, and it's going to the bottom view. Now, I don't dislike the gestures. I'm just not trained. I haven't trained myself to use them, but I do know a lot of people that do use the gestures, and they love them. So one of the things you can do is, like right here, if I select this face, I can hit the sketch button right here. I can go up to sketch and click on the sketch button right here. But if I right click, I don't have a sketch function here. So again, if we go to customize, so just hit the little gear, the arrow next to the gear icon, select customize. and then go to mouse gestures. Now this has been changing over the last 2, maybe even 3 releases. They have been making a lot of changes to this, the mouse gestures. So it's a feature that's getting a lot of focus from the development team. And a lot of this has to do with the new touch-based computers. Gestures work really, really well with the touch-based computers, to the point where in earlier versions of SOLIDWORKS, we could only, like when this started, you can only have 4 gestures. Then they updated to 8 gestures. And then either in 2019 or 2020, they upped it to 12. And the interesting thing is they actually made this circle a little bit bigger and basically made the selection area big enough that you can tap on these items with your finger. So if you're using a tablet that has a touch interface and you don't have your mouse connected to it, you can still use gestures and actually even turn off the command manager if you wanted to. But like right here, if I'm looking at this part mode, let's say right here, this is view orientation. I don't use that quite a bit, so I'm going to actually replace that with the boss extrude command. So over here, you can go by category, so you can go in here and say, well, I'm looking for insert, and there's the extrude. But one of the really nice things here is even if you're looking at all commands, you can do a search and say, what are my extrude commands? So there's boss extrude, cut extrude, surface extrude, another cut extrude, and then the 2D, the 3D extrude. But ultimately, you just take this and you drag it over here to where you want that command to be. And then when I click on OK, so I've selected that face. Oh, I meant to do sketch. So let me go back in here and go to customize, mouse gestures. I'm going to just type sketch, and I'm going to drag that right here. Click on OK. And then just right click at an angle, and I'm going into that sketch. So I'm now editing that sketch. Once I'm done, one of the things, if you're using Instant 3D, so if that's on, when you double click, it will exit the sketch. So if I double click on an item, it brings up the dimensions. But if I'm in sketch mode, so either editing the sketch or creating a new sketch, if you don't have a command running, so you can't have line running, but if we turn that off, if I double click here in this graphics area, that's an exit sketch, and it will accept the changes that you've made. So that's another little shortcut. We could probably spend hours and hours and hours just covering all the little keyboard shortcuts and mouse gestures. I can see there's a couple in here, so let's do this. Oh, the rotation. So the rotations, how I'm rotating this part right here is it's a 2-button mouse with a scroll wheel. It's just literally a $4 mouse from Dell. If I push the scroll wheel down, that's the same thing as running the middle. And if I push that down, it will rotate your model. Now, SOLIDWORKS chose to rotate the model slightly different than some of the other CAD tools. If I go to view and modify, there's these 2 options right here. Rotate about scene floor and rotate or zoom about the screen center. If you click on these, it rotates a little bit differently. The big thing is sometimes people get in here and they're like, oh, what does this do? And they turn it on and they don't like the way it is and they can't figure out how to go back to where it was. In those cases, just shoot us an email, support@goengineer.com, or give our technical support team a call and to just tell them what's going on, and we'll be able to get you back to where you were. But one of the tip for you on this rotate, if I put my cursor on an edge or a face or a vertex, push the wheel down and then release it, it locks the rotation about that item that you've selected. So now so I'm going to go over here, I'm going to middle click and then hold the middle wheel down, and now I'm actually rotating about that corner of the model. Same thing, if I click on a face, so I'm middle clicking, so that's a click and release. That selected that face, and now when I rotate, I'm rotating about that face. And that's a little trick on the rotates, but hopefully that helps you about how I'm rotating. If you are in an assembly and you put your cursor over a part, if you hold the right mouse button down, it will rotate that part, not the assembly. The middle wheel will rotate the assembly. The right mouse button, when you're over a part, will rotate the part. And sometimes it's really nice to be able to rotate the parts in the assembly to kind of get them into a good position before you actually create your mates. All right, so let me get back to my PowerPoint here. Using the help, practice Model Mania. You can do a Google search. Again, if this is something that you're interested in doing, and I would definitely recommend, and I just realized I forgot to put this link at the end, but write this one down or come back when we get the video up. This link, SOLIDWORKS created a website that has 19 years of the Model Mania parts that they use at SOLIDWORKS World, or now the 3D Experience World. They're parts where they have you build a part and then make changes to the part. That is exactly what we do during the certification exam. We build parts and then we make changes to those parts. So these are actually really good practice parts. Do the practice exams. Absolutely. It's not only going to get you practice in doing the model work, but it will give you practice in seeing how they word the questions and how they what they're expecting for answers, either multiple choice or inserting a value type of thing. Last two pieces here. I already talked about this. The CSWP exam is in 3 parts, and each part has a dollar cost to it. So just keep that in mind. If you're planning on taking the CSWP, you're going to have to take 3 separate tests to get the CSWP. And then know how to create coordinate systems. This is specifically helpful when you are working in assemblies. But if I build a part here, where's my origin? Well, in this particular case, I put the origin in the bottom back left corner. Sometimes the test might ask you to tell you where the center of mass is, or where the center of mass is based off of this front left or front right corner. Instead of remodeling this, you can actually go over here to Insert, Reference Geometry, and Coordinate System, and select this corner here. So I'm going to click on that. Oh, I had that back corner selected. Let me clear that out and say this is where I want the coordinate system to be. And then here, this is my X, so I can flip that over. And then this is going to be my Y, and this is going to be my Z. Just match up with what they're showing you in the tester software. Hit the checkbox. And then when I go to evaluate and mass properties, right here, it's going to tell you where the center of mass is. Now, these values are based off of the origin of the part, which is back here in this corner. But they're asking me for where the center of mass is based off of this front corner. So right here, I can say report coordinates values relative to, and then I can select that coordinate system that I just created, which will change the center of mass values. So now it's looking at it from this coordinate system, not the origin coordinate system. So that's can be super, super helpful in the exam. Now, the next pieces we'll go through here is while you're taking the exam. I cannot stress enough, review all the questions before you answer any of them. A lot of the questions are built on the previous part or the previous question. So question 1 might have you build a box and ask you what the mass is. Question 2 might say change these values, dimensional values, and then tell me what the mass is. And then question 3 might say add a hole at this location and this diameter, and then tell me what the mass is. So it's just like if you're sitting down to create a part on your own, you're going to have a good idea as what the final part's going to look like. It's a good idea when you're taking a test, read through the questions. I have an anecdote that a long time ago when I was in the military, we were given a packet that had a bunch of questions in it, and the instructions were to read all the questions before you answer any of them. Question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4, and about, I think it was a 50-page or 50-question exam. And like somewhere around question 30, it said, do not answer any questions, turn the paper over, and assume a ready position. And what they were literally doing was not checking to see if you could answer the questions, but they were checking to see if you could follow the rules. So that's something I learned a long time ago. Review all the questions before you answer any. Verify if you're creating a new part or downloading a part. I've gotten caught with that where it showed me a part, it had all the dimensions. I just immediately went in and said File New and created the part, and then later on realized that I was actually supposed to download a part that had the sketches already created, and then all I actually had to do was extrude those. The test is timed. I wasted a lot of time creating the part when I didn't need to. Use the variables and link values. I think we beat that one, but use those variables. It's okay to use the help. And when you're in a command, click on the little question button. That will bring you to the help. Also, again, open the help file, help.solidworks.com. Do pay attention to the test units, the decimal places, and the mass units. Not saying that they're trying to trip you up, but they may say build the part in inches using the inch, pound, seconds, and then when it asks you for the mass, it might ask you for the mass in grams. So again, pay attention to what they're saying. Pay attention to what unit of measurement it's asking for when you're placing in the answers. Review all the answers when there's multiple choice. I know I have a tendency to just go to the answer, what I think it is, but I've still trying to discipline myself enough to look at each one of the answers, especially when it's a multiple choice, because more often than not, 2 or more of those questions or 2 or more of the answers will just completely be way off. Like it'll say, like, how do you create a variable radius fillet? And then one of the answers will be cut extrude, which we know is not the answer. So we can actually eliminate the question or some of the answers just by reading them. And then that will bring us down to 1 or 2, and then you can pick from there if you're not really sure what the exact answer is. Review all your answers. That's what I just talked about. Verify all your dimensions. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a question wrong and then subsequent questions wrong because it was built off of that part, or each question was built off because I fat fingered a dimension. 1.1 versus 0.11 is a huge difference. So when you're typing in your dimensions, make sure, double check, just look at the screen and say, okay, well, that dimension is supposed to be 0.11. Look at your screen and verify that it is 0.11. So those are some tips for when you're taking the exam. Sample exam, food for thought, a sample question. But before I go into that, I love showing these parts when I'm doing training classes. And it's not to show you that I'm smarter than you or I have more experience than you, but we have a tendency to make things too difficult. I have a part here. I've highlighted those faces in green because those are essentially your extrudes. This part consists of 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's a rectangle right here, 5. This whole part has 5 extrudes. That's it. No more, no less. There's only 5 features. 5 features to build this entire shape. 5 bosses, I should say. And then there's some fillets. So this works really, really well. Keep it simple. The sketches, these are the sketches that were used to create all of this here. Rectangle, that's this rectangle right here. The circle is obviously the top piece here and the top piece here. And this bottom piece, the trapezoid, we turn that upside down. That's this bottom half right here. And then the slot is right here. So this sketch right here is just a slot, a circle, and the trapezoid, and then trim them together. Another example that I like to show is this heat shield. I point out when I teach the training classes, this is not a simple part. There's no real flat faces. Everything's either got a draft angle or it's curving type of thing. But if we actually break this down, this whole part, if I look at the sketches, was all the sketches together make 5 lines, 4 arcs, and 2 rectangles. That's all we have to do to create this part. So when you're practicing, figure out how can I simplify these parts out. Don't try to draw the Taj Mahal in your sketches. Keep the sketches simple, keep your fillet or your features simple, because you are going to be making changes to the part, and by keeping those simple, you're going to be less likely to have any rebuild errors when you're making those changes. Also, side note, build your parts with the idea that you are going to be making changes to them. All right, so here's this, my sample part here. This is a question versus a building the model, and it is a multiple choice. So there's going to be some questions and then some model building. So in this particular case, it's showing me a drawing view. It's got 2 views in there. It's got that whole call out, but just looking at this and saying, okay, what is this? Okay, it's a drawing, and it says to create the drawing view AA, what you would insert which SOLIDWORKS view type. Now, again, looking at this and saying, well, it's definitely not a crop view, so I can blank that out. I don't see any section lines in here, so I can blank out that section. So the 2 options are projected or auxiliary. I can eliminate this because projections are typically going to the, for lack of a better term, horizontally or parallel. So they're kind of rolling the view out this way and rolling the view out this way. If I roll out the view this way with a projected view, it would give me an isometric. And this is not an isometric view. So in this particular case, even if you didn't know that was an auxiliary view, by eliminating these 3 answers right here, I know the only option is an auxiliary view. And just as a side note, that is how I created that view, is using an auxiliary view. Select the edge, click on auxiliary view, and then place the view. But by eliminating the answers one by one, even if I'm not really sure what the answer is, a lot of times you can get down to 1, maybe now you're 50-50 versus 25% chance of you picking the right one. All right, this is an example of where you're going to be building a model. It will say, okay, this is step 4. The part's called stand. Step 1 is build this model in SOLIDWORKS. Here, this is exactly how it's going to be worded. The unit system, so millimeters, grams, seconds, 2 decimal places. The part origin is arbitrary. All holes are through holes unless otherwise specified. The material is AISI 1020, which has a density of 0.0079 grams per cubic millimeter. And then if we look, this is A, this is B, and this is C. So 150 and 25. So to build this part, I would literally go into SOLIDWORKS, and this is how I would build it. I would come in and say File, New. I would select my part MM template, so I don't have to worry about changing the units. And then I immediately go up here and go to my equations, tools, equations, and let me go back to this. So 150 and 25. So I'd say, okay, I'm going to create a variable A, that's 100, B, that is 50, and then C, which is 25. Now I'm not going to build the whole part, but I've got my equations, and then I'd figure out what sketch I'm going to draw first. In this particular case, I'm going to draw this base. This is a top view, so I'm going to use the top sketch plane. And I like to build my parts center, but pay attention. Sometimes they'll actually illustrate where they want the origin. So if they say put the origin right here, build your part so the origin's right there, even if that's not how you normally build it. It doesn't show anything, so I'm going to use my center point rectangle, and I'm going to come in here. And if you see here, the width of that is A. So when I place my dimension, so I'm using my S key, it's coming here, place that dimension, say equal, and then select A. Click on the OK button, and then we'll come in here. That's 50. And then when I do my extrude, go back here, and this is why we like those dual monitors, so you don't have to keep switching from the tester software to the SOLIDWORKS software. So that's C right here. So I'm going to just come in here and type equal global variable C and hit the OK button. So there's my part. Then I can come in and create my next sketch. I'll come in here. When I start, I'm going to create my vertical line. Now I can hit the A key. That will change it to an arc. And if I go back to the start point, I can go across this way. And then make sure I close this up right here. And then start adding my dimensions. So that's 20. And then this is 50, and the height is B. So we'll say from this edge to the circle is 50. And for the height that's going to the bottom of the model. Now I sketched my lines up here at the top, but I can select the bottom edge, go to the arc, place it, and then here I'm going to say it's equal to C. And hit the checkbox. Equal to C. Oh no, sorry, that's B. Equal to B. Okay, and then extrude this, whatever the value is, 10. Type 10, reverse the direction, hit my checkbox, and then finish building the model. Assign my material, AISI 1020, and then I could get my mass once we're done. And then when I go back to the exam and look at the next question, so here's where it will say, what is the overall mass? And it'll either ask you to enter the value or select a value. And then the next question, question number 5, is step 2, build this part, but it says, okay, you're going to change A, B, and C to 150, 50, and 25. Oh, I forgot to change 25, or question number C. So let's say 150, 50, and 10. So when I go back into SOLIDWORKS, instead of having to find the dimensions, I can literally go here to Tools, Equations. I'm going to insert Tools, Equations, and then just change this 150. Let's say this changed to 35, and this one changes to 10. And then hit the OK button. Simply rebuild the part, and then go to my evaluate and get the mass properties. Instead of having to go to each dimension and figuring out which feature they come from. Having that equation dialog box and being able to just type in the values for A, B, and C, bam, 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 and then rebuild and get the answer. So that's just, it's a method. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best method. It's the method I use for doing when I take the exams. So it works well for me. It might not work well for you, but try it. If it's something that works well for you, practice it until it becomes kind of second nature. Okay, and then we'll ask you what the overall part of the modified exam is. So tips and tricks. When you are building your models, save after each step. I like to say save and save often. So when you're actually in here creating these things, let's say if I go back in here, I'm going to use a rollback bar here, but I created this feature, hit save. And if this part was called, this part here was stand, okay? So I'm going to call this stand, and then step 1. And then pull this down. Okay, I've built this. I'm going to do File, Save As. I'm holding the Alt key and hitting F and then the A, but you can also hit Save As. And then I'm just going to change this to say Step 2. So ultimately what I'm doing is building a history of each step. So if I mess up something and I need to go back, instead of having to rebuild up to that, I can just go grab the file that is saved up to step 5, for example, and be able to pull that back up. Save your model after each question. Use your save as and name it with that question name. So you're going to have a maybe 3 or 4 questions that are building one model. So when you start the model, call it stand step 1, stand step 2, stand step 3. Then when you're done, save it as stand final. This way, after the fact, after you're done with the test, let's say I know you guys will do a great job, but let's say you don't pass the exam. This will give you an opportunity to go back, and you can't see the test questions anymore, but you can at least see the model and see what steps you did and say, okay, where may I have made a mistake? If you need to restart something, use the reload function. As I'm going through here and creating additional steps, and if I come in and say, well, let's create the 2 holes back here. So I'll put those in here, and I'll put some dimensions. Go here. And then here, I'm going to go this way. And then get this dimension. Okay. And I think I'm done. So I'm going to go in here and say features extrude. Now, before I do that, I might actually save this. Okay. So I'm saving it. And then I'll go to features extrude and roll this over and specify my height and hit the checkbox. And then I realize, oh man, I was supposed to cut those, not extrude them. This is kind of a crazy example. We'll say this is for training purposes. But one of the things you can do is, because I saved the sketch, I can actually go to File and use the reload function. So I don't see it right here. Let's go in here and say reload. So I'll click right here. And I can say reload this file, and then click on OK. And say, well, it's currently open. You're going to discard any changes. Well, yes, I want to discard those changes. And it brings me back to exactly where I was before I created the extrude. So at this point, I can say, let's make sure I hit cut extrude. And then, oh, okay, that's exactly what I wanted. So use that reload function. If you get to a point, if you're saving and saving often, you can just say, well, let's just reload the model back to my last save. That's, again, something that I use on a regular basis. I'm a big advocate of saving and saving often. Don't assume that there's a issue with the question. These questions are vetted, and then literally hundreds of people every month take these exams. If there are problems with the questions, they've been brought up. The SOLIDWORKS is evaluated. They've made changes if necessary. So if you're doing something and your mask comes to completely something different than any of the multiple choice answers, instead of assuming the question is wrong, assume your model is wrong. I hate to put it that way, but the exam questions are vetted not only by SOLIDWORKS, but by everyone else that's taken the test before you. Set up your hotkey, shortcut menu, your gestures. If you use them, don't try to start just using the shortcut keys if you're not comfortable with using shortcut keys. If you've never used shortcut keys, while you're taking the exam is not the optimal time to learn how to use shortcut keys. Build your models based on the origin. If you see an origin in the exam pictures, match it. Learn how to break your models down to simple features and plan for changes. Don't build your complex models with complex sketches. And this guy right here, I cannot stress enough, don't put sketch or fillets in your sketches. There are specific cases where you want to do that, but I'm going to say overall, sketch fillets, bad idea. Create your fillets as features. And don't forget your modeling rules. This is where the Essentials class comes in. I actually pulled this out of the Essentials manual. This is just an example. The rules for fillets. Leave your cosmetic fillets to the end. Build all your bosses, add all your cuts, then add your fillets and chamfers. Create multiple fillets that will have the same radius and the same command. If you've got 4 edges that have a 10 millimeter fillet on it, don't create 4 10 millimeter fillets. Create one fillet with the 4 edges. Where you need fillets of different radii, generally, you should make the larger fillets first. This is when you're going into your model. If I take this, I'm going to get rid of these features. So I'm going to delete those. and add a new sketch, do an offset to the inside, extrude that up here like that. All right. So when I'm creating my fillets in here, let's say I want to do 4mm fillets along this edge and then 2mm fillets along this edge and this edge. Well, by creating that 4mm fillet here, it created a face that allowed the tangent propagation. So I didn't have to select that second edge. It just tangent selected it for me. Now, if I change this, so I'm going to actually get rid of these. And I do this backwards. I do my 2mm fillet first, and I select this edge. Well, I now have to select this edge. And then we'll hit the checkbox. And then I hit enter. That's repeat last command inside of SOLIDWORKS. Just simply hit enter, or you can right click and select recent commands. Oh, it's in a selection box, so it won't let me get that right now. But if I close this, right click and go to recent commands, these are the most recent commands I've used. So I could come over here and just quickly hit save, then right click, recent commands, and select fillet. And then I'll do my 4, and I'll place that right here. So I had to do more mouse selects by doing the 2mm fillet first. And if I look at this corner, this is different. The corner right here is different than if I had done the 4mm fillet first. I'm going to actually reorder these right here, and you can see this corner. So this is the corner I was looking for. That requires me to do the larger fillet and then the smaller fillet, which is actually easier, and it gives me this corner the way I want it. If I'd done it by not following those rules, which again are more guidelines than hard set rules, but they're good guidelines. Not only do I have to work harder, but I don't get the corner that I was looking for or that I was expecting. So those are good things to know. General rules of I'll get back to my presentation. There we go. When you create your fillets, create the larger fillets first. And that the order that you create those fillets is important, because you can get changes in the geometry, or the result that is produced can actually be changed by simply changing the order that you create your features. Okay? So those are some tips and tricks. If anybody hasn't got this, my little internal joke, I thought it was funny, but I'm also the king of bad jokes. That's a try tip and a magic trick. So, sorry. All right, so questions and answers. I think I've hit all the questions that came in. There was one on how to create the coordinate system. So as we'll go through here, simply creating the coordinate system is going into Insert, Reference Geometry, and selecting Coordinate System. Then you want to know, where do you want the point to be? Now you can also come down here and select, okay, I want this to be, like right now that's my x-axis. I'm going to say I want this to be my x-axis. I want this to be my y-axis. And then we're going to flip that so z is going up, and hit the checkbox. And now I have a coordinate system based off of those edges, but the coordinate system is, its location is where the original coordinate system was. So this is now my x, and this is my y based off the coordinate system, where here, this is my x, and this is my y. If I change that coordinate system by going back in here and specify a location, right here, that's going to change that 0 point. So we're doing that there. And then, as I mentioned, when we do the evaluate, you can do your mass properties based off that coordinate system. Something else that's actually could be very helpful is if you're exporting. I do a lot of step exports for our PCB tools. So when I go in here and save as, and let's say I save this as a step file or parasolids or something, when I do that, if I go into the options, I can specify which coordinate system I want to export this model based off of. So right here, output coordinate system is going to be based off of the coordinate system I just created. And when I save this, instead of having the 0, 0 being in the middle of the part, it will be in the bottom right-hand corner of the part. All right, so let me pull up this mainly so you can write down any of these links if you want to hit those before we get this seminar up on our website. Over here on the right-hand side, somebody did ask me about how to get those free exam vouchers. So 2 Yankee, Romeo, Quebec, Lima, Bravo, Echo with the bit.ly. That is a web page that SOLIDWORKS built for how to get those step-by-step on how to get those vouchers. I will point out that you are going to need to create a virtual tester account. There's a link in this to create that virtual tester account and what website you go to, and then also how to create a SOLIDWORKS customer portal account. While we're thinking about this, or while I'm thinking about this, if I bring this up, if you go to our website, the kb.goengineer.com, and say type customer portal right here, one of my coworkers, Nick, created a document on how to access the customer portal and how to create your account. Also, how to link your SOLIDWORKS serial number to that account so you have full access to all the features. Here's another one on, here's a document that Adam built just a little while ago on how to get those certification codes as well. So you can actually just go to our knowledge base and type in customer portal, or if you type in certification right here, you'll have access to all the previous webinars we've done, as well as links on how to do this. Like here's a SOLIDWORKS certification summary. Another place I haven't talked about very much, but if you type my SOLIDWORKS, Brian Childry created this great video on accessing my SOLIDWORKS and how to create your account. There's a lot of free training up there as well. So here's our resources, our certification website, our Go University, our knowledge base, and our YouTube site. Here's a link to my SOLIDWORKS. Here's the course catalog, and somebody just asked about test questions pertaining to assemblies and stuff. Absolutely. If you go to this certification catalog and click on the CSWA mechanical design or CSWP mechanical design, in their sample exams, they actually have questions on parts, assemblies, and drawing. S key and search bar. I will do that. I'll make sure that I get any of these other questions up. And we're right here at the end of the session. I'm actually 1 minute over. So I will say thank you to everyone for joining us. It's been awesome having you guys here. I know things are super, super crazy around the world. Taking the time out of the craziness to watch our seminar. We do really appreciate that. We here at GoEngineer, our president has kind of made us aware that he plans on continuing operations just like we normally do for the foreseeable future. With the exception of our on-site training classes and customer visits, we're switching over to kind of a more virtual meetings and training classes. But we are still here. Our tech support's fully staffed. All the application engineers are working. For those of you that are interested, our sales team is working as well. They're great resources for getting information on how to get signed up for any of the training classes that we do, or if you need additional seats. We've actually had quite a few people come up and say, well, you know, now that my company's kind of put us on hiatus while I'm doing that, I'd like to do some contract work. How do I get a seat of SOLIDWORKS? Give us a call. We'd be more than happy to sell you a seat of SOLIDWORKS as well. But thank you very much for your time. And again, if you have any questions, I've got my contact information down there. But you can really literally contact anyone here at GoEngineer, and we would be more than happy to help. That is the end of our presentation. If you're still here, the person that asked the question about the S key, I will switch over to SOLIDWORKS and talk about that while everyone is disconnecting. Thank you very much again, and have a great week. All right, so let's switch over to SOLIDWORKS. I'm actually going to really quickly go in here and get rid of these equations because they are failing because I don't have those dimensions in the model anymore. All right, and then I'll get rid of the model and all this stuff here. So the S key and the shortcut, literally what a lot of people do is instead of using all this stuff up here, matter of fact, you can hit F9 and turn off the command manager, F10 to turn off the feature manager if you want to. But I can select where I'm going to sketch and then literally just hit the S key. Say I want to create an extrude. It knows it has to create a sketch, and then S key to say I want to create a rectangle. Then S key to create the dimensions. And then S key because I added the extrude button right here to do the extrude. However, because I started the sketch by saying I want to do an extrude, I can literally just turn off the dimension tool and double click to exit the sketch, which will finish me off into the command I started, which was extrude. And then I can say, we're going to say this is a specific height, and I'm good to go. Now, if I need help finding a feature, for whatever reason I can't find the fillet command, I hit the S key. This puts me into the search function. And I can literally just start typing. You can come up here and click in the box, but literally you just start typing fillet, F-I-L-L-E-T. And then here's fillet surface, fillet, and fillet bead. If I click on the item here, it will run the command. If I click on the eyeball and then let go of the mouse, it will actually go to the command and put the big red arrow there, and also put your cursor where that command is. And this is super helpful. Like if I wanted to do chamfers, I don't see the chamfer command anywhere in here. So if I come in and say chamfer and hit the button, it will just run the chamfer. But if I click on the eyeball, it'll come over here and say it's in here. So I can hit this down arrow and there's my chamfer command. So hopefully that helps you with the search here. You can just click in there, just make sure you're at the command search if you're searching for commands. It doesn't matter where you are. If you use the S key, if you use the S key, it will automatically switch to search commands and then just start typing boundary, for example. So how do I create a boundary cut? Well, click on this and then it will put me into the dialog for creating a boundary cut. So I hope that helps. Again, any questions, just shoot me an email or give me a call. Thanks, and have a great day, everyone.